looking to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Asean In Focus on tonight's headlines.
Some of the most serious allegations concern incidents of killing of Rohingya civilians and the burning of their property.
We have confirmed at least 4 cases of beheadings.
The United Nations warned that escalating fighting in conflict-torn Myanmar's Rakhine State had forced around 45,000 minority Rohingya to flee amid allegations of killings and burnings of property.
Within, I think, a few seconds, he not yet clicked on the seatbelt, he flew away.
A Malaysian woman whose 6 relatives and a friend were injured on a Singapore Airlines flight hit by deadly turbulence this week said they had only seconds to react before the plane started to plunge. Rescue teams have arrived at the site of a devastating landslide in Papua New Guinea's remote highlands. The disaster, which struck Anga province early Friday morning, has left hundreds of villagers feared dead under massive mounds of rubble and mud. And tragedy struck in Haiti as a U.S. couple and a 3rd missionary were shot and killed by a gang outside a church in Port-au-Prince, a city plagued by months of extreme violence targeting hospitals, prisons, and government buildings. First in our news, the United Nations warned that escalating fighting in conflict-torn Myanmar's Rakhine State had forced around 45,000 minority Rohingya to flee amid allegations of killings and burnings of property.
An estimated 45,000 Rohingya have reportedly fled to an area on the Naf River near the border with Bangladesh, seeking protection. Over 1 million Rohingya are already in Bangladesh, having fled past purges. The High Commissioner calls on Bangladesh and other states to provide effective protection to those seeking it in line with international law and to ensure international solidarity with Bangladesh in hosting Rohingya refugees in Myanmar.
Clashes have rocked Rakhine since the Arakan army attacked forces of the ruling junta in November, ending a ceasefire that had largely held since a military coup in 2021. The AA says it's fighting for more autonomy for the ethnic Rakhine population in the state, which is also home to around 600,000 members of the persecuted Rohingya Muslim minority. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya fled Rakhine in 2017 during a crackdown by the military that is now the subject of a UN genocide court case. James Rodever, head of the Rights Office Myanmar team, described the horrifying situation many were fleeing from.
In the weeks leading up to the burning of Butadong, the Myanmar team of the UN Human Rights Office has documented renewed attacks on Rohingya civilians, both by the Arakan army and by the military in northern Rakhine State. Of course, many of these were as a result of airstrikes perpetrated by the military, as well as other attacks perpetrated by unmanned aerial vehicles, so drones.
He also said his team had received testimonies and seen satellite images online, videos, and pictures indicating that Butidang town had been largely burned.
But we have been able to review and see that many of those source materials are credible, and they indicate that Butidang town has been largely burned. This of course, is very, it is corroborated by many of the testimonies that we've taken from victims and eyewitnesses to some of the events that occurred inside Butidong town beginning last Friday afternoon and evening there.
Now, in the weeks leading up to the burning of Butidang, Rodever said the Rights Office had documented renewed attacks of Rohingya civilians by both AA and the military in northern Rakhine.
And we've also received reports of shooting at unarmed fleeing villagers. We have confirmed at least 4 cases of beheadings and multiple enforced disappearances of individuals, as well as several villages and homes that have been burned. Now, for years, the military has targeted the Rohingya and have actively enforced draconian and discriminatory restrictions affecting all aspects of their lives. That has to be taken into account. And it's one of the reasons why the Rohingya, whenever they were asked to leave Motodong and other villages, have been very reluctant to move because they've needed special permission to move outside of their township of residence.
The EU, United States, and other countries jointly voiced alarm at the worsening conflict in Myanmar and the increasing harm to civilians it was bringing. They particularly expressed concern at reports tens of thousands of civilians in Rakhine State, where the Rohingya minority live, have been forced to flee their homes and called on all armed actors to ensure the protection of civilians. The signatories of the joint statement, the EU, UA, the United States, Australia, Britain, Canada, South Korea, New Zealand, Norway, and Switzerland, stressed, quote, there must be accountability for all atrocities committed in Myanmar. Now this week, a Singapore Airlines flight from London to Singapore encountered severe turbulence during its final leg. The plane dropped rapidly, injuring over 100 passengers and crew. One person, a 73-year-old British man, tragically died. A passenger's relative shared their loved one's experience. They described the harrowing moments before the drop, with little time to react.
That time, he say actually that time is very calm, and then the seatbelt sign is off, and everybody is like moving, and then the stewardess is actually still serving or collecting the without the seatbelt. But then once they feel the vibration and the shaking, they really start looking for the seatbelt. They want to fasten, but then within I think a few seconds, he not yet clicked on the seatbelt, he already flew away, and my brother flew away, and then he fall on the floor. And my sister-in-law actually flew up, and then she dropped on the second seat, next to her.
Several family members are in intensive care with injuries including head, brain, and spine trauma.
And one of the friends actually fastened seatbelt, but then his condition also very bad. He's having the injury on the neck, and then he have to put on that support after the today.
เคสที่อาการรุนแรงที่สุดก็มีการบาดเจ็บของกระดูกสันหลังส่วนคอซึ่งได้รับการรักษาด้วยการผ่าตัดไปแล้ว
The airline expressed condolences to the victim's family and apologized for the passengers' ordeal.
Once again, our deepest apologies to everyone affected by this incident. Please be assured that Singapore Airlines is here to help and support you during this difficult time.
Now they've already implemented stricter seatbelt enforcement and a more cautious approach to turbulence following the incident. Investigators are looking into the cause, analyzing cockpit data. Air safety experts urge passengers to always wear seatbelts to be prepared for unexpected turbulence. China's war games around Taiwan have concluded, according to state media, following 2 days of military exercises aimed at testing Beijing's ability to seize the self-ruled island. The Chinese army has successfully completed the Joint Sword 2024A drills targeting Taiwan, according to a broadcast by CCTV-7, China's state-run military news channel, late Friday. Now, during the 2-day exercises, Taiwan's defense ministry reported that 111 Chinese aircraft and numerous naval vessels surrounded the island. Footage from the drill shows significant military activity around Taiwan, highlighting the scale of Beijing's operations. The exercises commenced just 3 days after Taiwan President Lai Ching-te took office. His inauguration speech was condemned by China as a confession of independence. Beijing's defense ministry spokesman Wu Qian criticized President Lai, stating that he had seriously challenged the One China principle.
台湾地区领导人上任就严重挑战一个中国原则，赤裸裸贩卖两国论，妄图以武谋独、以外谋独，把台湾同胞推向兵凶战危的险境。 这完全是在玩火，玩火者必自焚。台湾是中国的台湾，怎么解决台湾问题， 是14亿多中国人民自己的事。中国人民解放军以实际行动捍卫国家主权和领土完整。台独挑衅一次，我们的反制就推进一步，直至实现祖国完全统一。
These drills are part of China's ongoing campaign of intimidation marked by a series of large-scale military exercises around Taiwan in recent years.
This round of military drill is like an appetizer for now. And whether there will be a bigger main course down the road depends on not only how confident China feels about their military ability, but also how other countries go about speaking up against this provocation for the region. And that's going to decide whether China will try to stabilize, soften down, or if China is going to further escalate and think that using intimidation is the most effective way to pursue China's interest. In a way, it's Beijing using pressure to sort of nip it in the bud, so to speak, to try to scare other countries away from engaging with Taiwan. When that happens, that furthers isolation of Taiwan, which allows Beijing to negotiate with Taiwan going forward from a position of strength. So I think that's the main point here for Beijing. So in terms of scale, Beijing has learned to optimize it. This scale is significant, but it's nowhere near as big, it seems, as last August military drills. So this is how Beijing goes about doing things as well. They try to monitor the reaction and then to potentially adjust the scale, size, and scope of their military drills from that point onwards. International community's position here is to tell China that they are not happy with this provocation, that whatever China's business may be with Taiwan, this kind of military drills in those vital sea lanes of communication in Northeast Asia, near Taiwan, near China, will create disruption to international maritime commerce. Things that are not just a Chinese interest, quote unquote, but also a matter of global interest, and one that's really causing negative spillover effect for other countries as well. For sure, I mean, Taiwan has always been somewhat of a canary in the coal mine, in a sense. And I think other countries in the region, Philippines for sure, but also other Southeast Asian countries and Japan, will be looking at how China manages its differences with Taiwan, to think about how China may go about managing their differences with other countries in the region in the future as well. So when China is using force to intimidate Taiwan, other regional countries are probably looking at it and thinking, this doesn't really bode all that well in terms of how they can peacefully manage China's ascendancy in the region.
Rescue teams have arrived at the site of a devastating landslide in Papua New Guinea's remote highlands. The disaster, which struck Enga province early Friday morning, has left hundreds of villagers feared dead under massive mounds of rubble and mud. The landslide hit at around 3 a.m. when many were still asleep in their homes. Community leader Mark Ipria expressed grave concerns, fearing that over 300 villagers may be buried beneath the debris. And so far, rescue teams have recovered at least 4 bodies. UN official Serkan Aktoprak, speaking from Port Moresby, described the scene as harrowing. He said, quote, "There are many houses buried under the debris, making it challenging to reach survivors." He said, estimating that as many as 3,000 people lived in the hillside settlement. The unstable ground continues to shift, posing significant dangers to rescue operations. Aid agencies report that the landslide has obliterated the village's livestock, food gardens, and clean water sources. A rapid response team comprising of medics, military, and police arrived this morning, Saturday, navigating rugged terrain and damaged roads. Humanitarian agency CARE expressed deep concern about the potential high death toll despite the area's low population density. Dozens of local men and women are scrambling over the rubble, digging, crying out, and listening for any signs of life amidst the devastation. The area, sitting just south of the equator, is prone to frequent heavy rains. In March, a nearby province suffered a similar tragedy, with at least 23 people killed by a landslide. Scorching heat is gripping South Asia, with Pakistan taking drastic measures to keep its children safe. Half of Pakistan's students, roughly 26 million, will be forced to miss school starting Saturday. And this comes as Punjab, the country's most populated province, announces an early summer break due to the intense heat wave. Temperatures in Punjab are already 6 to 8 degrees Celsius or 11 to 14 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, with forecasts predicting even worse in the coming weeks. The provincial capital, Lahore, could hit a scorching 46 degrees Celsius or 111 degrees Fahrenheit this weekend.
बच्चे आ जा रहे हैं, गर्मी इतनी ज़्यादा है, बच्चों में रिहाइड्रेशन हो रही है और इसके अलावा बहुत सारे बच्चे जो हैं वो फेंट हो रहे हैं घबराहट की वजह से। मेरे ख्याल से तो इनको छुट्टियां दे देनी चाहिए क्योंकि ज़्यादा बच्चों को बीमार करके और बच्चों को ज़्यादा उनके नुकसान करने से बेहतर है कि अभी थोड़ा मौसम चेंज हो जाए फिर ही
देनी चाहिए क्योंकि छोटे बच्चे हैं, इसमें हीट स्ट्रोक का जो है वो बच्चों के लिए प्रॉब्लम जो है वो हो सकती है। तो अभी तो इनके तो मंथली टेस्ट जो है वो 27 से शुरू हैं, तो होपफुली इसके बाद जो है वो बच्चों को छुट्टियां देनी चाहिए।
Officials are blaming climate change for the extreme weather, and they're warning of 3 separate heat waves this summer, forcing the government to take action. Power outages are adding to the misery, with many families relying on fans and air conditioning to beat the heat. Rolling blackouts are leaving children sweltering at home and in classrooms. Excess heat is potentially lethal to children, said a representative from Save the Time Children or Save the Children. They, along with UNICEF, warn of the dangers children face in such extreme temperatures. Now, these include dehydration, heat stroke, and even coma. Now, this heat wave is a harsh reminder of the impact climate change is having on South Asia. With children especially vulnerable, officials are urging families to take precautions to keep them safe during these scorching temperatures. And tragedy struck in Haiti as a U.S. couple and a third missionary were shot and killed by a gang outside a church in Port-au-Prince, a city plagued by months of extreme violence targeting hospitals, prisons, and government buildings. The victims, Davy and Natalie Lloyd, along with Jude Montes, the Haitian director of the nonprofit missions in Haiti, were ambushed on Thursday evening. The Oklahoma-based organization, founded in 2000, confirmed the news on their Facebook page, expressing their devastation. According to police reports, the attackers looted the house before murdering the missionaries. Missions in Haiti revealed that the gang initially tied up and beat Davy Lloyd before stealing valuables and vehicles. Subsequently, another gang launched a full-scale attack. The White House has responded to the incident, advocating for the swift deployment of a Kenyan-led multinational force to address the rampant gang violence in Haiti.
The United States is also firmly committed to supporting Kenya in its deployment to lead the multinational security support mission to Haiti, which will provide much-needed security assistance to the Haitian people.
Haiti has long been troubled by poverty, natural disasters, political instability, and violence. The country has been without a precedent since the assassination of Jovenel Moise in 2021 and has no sitting parliament. The last election was in 2016, and a new transitional government is struggling to maintain order amidst food shortages, mass displacement, and a collapsing healthcare system. Israel bombed the Gaza Strip, including Rafah, on Saturday, just a day after the top UN court ordered it to halt military operations in the southern city.
The court considered that, in conformity with its obligations under the Genocide Convention, Israel must immediately halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group in Gaza conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
Efforts are now underway in Paris to seek a ceasefire in the war sparked by Hamas's October 7 attack. The International Court of Justice, or ICJ, has also demanded the immediate release of all hostages still held by Palestinian militants.
The court expressed its grave concern over the fate of the hostages abducted during the attacks in Israel on October 7, 2023, and held since then by Hamas and other armed groups, and called for their immediate and unconditional release. The court finds it deeply troubling that many of these hostages remain in captivity and reiterates its call for their immediate and unconditional release.
And this comes after the Israeli military announced it had recovered the bodies of 3 more captives from northern Gaza.
Hanan was partying with his friends at the Nova Music Festival. He was murdered by Hamas terrorists and his body was taken into Gaza. Michel, an Israeli and Brazilian citizen, was on his way to pick up his 4-year-old granddaughter. He was murdered by Hamas terrorists and his body was taken into Gaza. Orion Hernandez, a tourist from Mexico with French citizenship, was partying with his girlfriend, Shani Luke, at the Nova Music Festival. Shani and Orion were celebrating life in the Nova Music Festival. They were both murdered by Hamas terrorists and their bodies were taken into Gaza. There are men, women, children, and babies being held by Hamas in living hell across our border in Gaza. We will not stop fighting for their freedom. Every decent country in the world would do the same.
Following the ICJ ruling, Israel carried out strikes on the Gaza Strip early Saturday, while clashes between the Israeli army and Hamas continued. Ceasefire talks involving U.S., Egyptian, and Qatari mediators ended shortly after Israel launched the Rafah operation. However, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office stated this week that the war cabinet had asked the Israeli delegation to continue negotiations for the return of the hostages. The United States announced a new package of military aid for Ukraine, including ammunition, missiles, mines, and artillery rounds, as Russia intensifies its assault on the Kharkiv region. Ukraine has been fighting back in Kharkiv since May 10, when thousands of Russian troops stormed the border, making their largest territorial advances in 18 months. Last month, U.S. lawmakers passed a long-delayed $61 billion military aid deal for Kiev after months of debate in Congress. Ukrainian forces had been suffering setbacks on the battlefield due to ammunition and funding shortages. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko in Minsk to discuss security and exercises with tactical nuclear weapons. During the summit, Putin declared that Russia no longer considers Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky legitimate, as presidential elections scheduled for March 2024 were not held due to the ongoing conflict.
Думаю, что одна из целей конференции, которая анонсирована, конференция в Швейцарии, как раз и заключается в том, чтобы западное сообщество, спонсоры сегодняшнего киевского режима, подтвердили легитимность действующего главы государства или уже не действующего. Но, конечно, мы отдаем себе отчет в том, что легитимность действующего главы государства, она закончилась.
Former Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley has made a significant political U-turn, announcing she will vote for Donald Trump in November, despite their past exchanges of harsh insults.
As a voter, I put my priorities on a president who's going to have the backs of our allies and hold our enemies to account, who would secure the border, no more excuses. A president who would support capitalism and freedom. A president who understands we need less debt, not more debt.
Haley re-emerged on the public stage for the first time since suspending her campaign, delivering a foreign policy address. However, her remarks about U.S. threats were overshadowed by her remarkable pivot from being one of Trump's fiercest critics to now supporting him.
Trump has not been perfect on these policies. I've made that clear many, many times. But Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump.
Despite leaving the race in March, Haley has stayed out of the public eye, reconnecting with her family, including her husband, Michael, who returned from a year-long overseas deployment. Haley has been winning votes in Republican primaries, exposing a potential challenge for Trump in unifying the party, especially in suburban swing state areas like Chester and Montgomery counties outside Philadelphia, where Haley received nearly 25% of the vote.
Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for me and continue to support me, and not assume that they're just going to be with him. And I genuinely hope he does that.
While Trump has not extended an olive branch to Haley or her supporters, the Biden campaign has targeted them through digital ads, reminding them of Trump's previous insults and attempting to sway those voters eager to prevent Trump from returning to the White House.
And just a little note to Nikki, she's not going to win. She's not going to win. But if she did, she would be under investigation by those people in 15 minutes. And I could tell you 5 reasons why already. Not big reasons, a little stuff that she doesn't want to talk about, but she will be under investigation within minutes.
Elvis Presley's Graceland mansion in Memphis almost faced foreclosure this week. A judge in Tennessee temporarily halted the scheduled auction after Elvis's granddaughter challenged the validity of a loan used as collateral. Graceland is the second most visited historic home in the U.S., right behind the White House. The iconic residence became a museum in 1982, thanks partly to efforts by Elvis's ex-wife, Priscilla Presley. A lending company claimed Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, defaulted on a loan and attempted to seize Graceland. However, the judge's decision allows the Presley family to keep the property open to the public. This is a win for Elvis fans everywhere. Graceland remains a cultural landmark and a testament to the King of Rock and Roll's enduring legacy. Tech billionaire Elon Musk is a big name in electric vehicles and space exploration, but he also has strong opinions on solving the world's energy and water challenges. At the recent World Water Forum in Bali, Musk spoke about the potential of solar power and batteries to create a more sustainable future. Let's hear what Elon Musk had to say.
I think you can basically turn any part of the world green, including the entire world. So it just begs the question of where does the energy come from? And here's where I think solar energy is very much underestimated in terms of its capability.
Musk believes solar power is a key solution and that its potential is often overlooked.
The cost of solar power has dropped dramatically over the years.
Now, Musk highlights the significant cost reductions in both solar power and battery storage, making renewable energy a more attractive option.
So if you were to say, look at the cost of solar power 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, it would have seemed cost prohibitive. But the cost of solar power today is extremely low. And the cost of batteries to store the energy has also dropped dramatically. The cost of battery storage of electricity has dropped by a factor of 10 in the past 5 years.
He also emphasized the power and potential of combining solar with battery storage.
The sheer magnitude of solar power that is available is often not quite understood, but the math of it is very clear. So I really would strongly recommend sort of a solar plus battery combination or wind plus solar can solve all of the world's energy needs by a lot.
Musk argues that a combination of solar and battery storage or solar and wind could solve the world's energy needs entirely. He even provides a surprising example to illustrate the abundance of solar energy.
And if you do the rough math, to power the United States, which is a heavy user of electricity, would take less than a 200 kilometer by 200 kilometer solar array, power the entire United States. And if you drive through the United States, there's plenty of sections of the United States where there is basically no people. Or another way to think of it is a small section of the Sahara could power all of Europe.
Now, Musk suggests that a relatively small area covered in solar panels could generate enough electricity to power entire continents. He then connects the dots between solar power and solving the water crisis through desalination.
But desalination, as I think most people know, has become very inexpensive, and so really the availability of fresh water is simply about energy and transport. So that's when I talk to even very well-read, very smart people in the United States, they will often think, well, the water crisis is unsolvable. But in fact, it is very solvable.
Musk wraps up with a lighthearted but thought-provoking analogy about Earth's water abundance.
We call Earth Earth, but actually Earth is 70% water by surface area. So we technically, I think if aliens came here, and a lot of people think aliens have come here, because they're always asking me about aliens, they would name us water, because we are 70% water and only 30% land.
Now, tech leader Elon Musk also visited Indonesia to launch Starlink, his satellite internet service aiming to bring connectivity to remote areas. Millions in the island nation currently lack reliable internet. Musk inaugurated Starlink at a clinic in Bali alongside health officials. They also discussed using Starlink to improve health data collection in remote regions. Starlink services will be trialed this month in Indonesia's new capital, Nusantara, on the island of Borneo, which will open its doors in August. The Indonesian government is moving the capital from traffic-clogged Jakarta, where researchers say large areas could be underwater by 2050 due to rising sea levels and land subsidence. After the trial, Starlink, which acquired a permit to operate in Indonesia earlier this month, could be rolled out commercially across the archipelago. And this would expand internet access in Southeast Asia, where Starlink already operates in Malaysia and the Philippines.
This can make really a lifesaver for remote medical clinics, and I think it can be transformative for education as well. If you can access the internet, then you can learn anything, and you can also sell your goods and services worldwide. So I think it's going to be incredibly beneficial, especially to remote communities.
10,000 pusat. Yes, there is a limit, but I do hope that the limit will be enough to cover the Starlink cost.
And here's our correspondent at large, Thomas I. Likeness, for more extraordinary stories.
And now news and commentary from around the globe. Lots of things from out of the ordinary this week. We start with a food feature. Food scientists in Finland say the farmers of the future will make protein by feeding microbes just a diet of air and electricity. Pasi Vianika is the CEO of Solar Foods, and he calls his food production system cellular agriculture.
We let the organism just grow and multiply in our bioreactors. Then we harvest and dry the microbe, and that microbe itself is called soline, a protein-rich powder.
So what can this powder be used for? I mean, it just doesn't sound all that appetizing.
We can replace egg, for example, in pasta applications, vegan mayo, and so on.
He says cellular agriculture will reduce the need for farmland, and much of that land can then be returned to the wild. I wonder if you could feed some of that stuff to carnivorous plants. You know, with pressures on the ecosystem, much of this greenery is on the endangered list. This past week in Bogota, Colombia, the city hosted its 5th exhibition of carnivorous plants. People had a chance to view about 300 specimens. Now, these plants feed on insects that they lure. The most common, and we've all heard about it, is the Venus flytrap. But there's hundreds of other species, more than 800 of them, in fact. They grow in areas where there's little nutrition from the soil. And scientists fear that a quarter of these plants face extinction. Climate change, land clearing, and poaching, those are the biggest threats. Also endangered, the animals at a zoo in war-torn Gaza. Fathi Ahmed Goma and his sons are caring for the animals in a barn in Khan Yunis. They transferred most of them from their zoo in Rafah following the Israeli army's incursion into Gaza's southernmost city. Goma says several animals have become casualties of war, He says it's a challenge to find food and water to keep them alive. Gomez says there are still 3 lions that are stuck in that zoo in Rafah. They don't have any food, they don't have any water. He's appealing to Israeli authorities to arrange the evacuation of the big cats. On the verge of extinction, some of the greatest movies ever made. In Hollywood, a battle against time is underway to preserve these films. Thousands of reels of film sit in storage in special vaults. The temperature is controlled, as is the humidity. Doug Sylvester of the Film Preservation and Storage Company, Protect Vaults, says they do what they can to slow the degradation.
Keeping film in the proper environment ensures its longevity and allows you to have a pristine, often original copy that can be used to make additional prints, additional digital copies over time.
Sylvester says the films they store are a rich part of cultural history. He says preserving them will allow future generations to enjoy them. Now let's take a moment to look up, way up at one of the wonders of the night sky. What you see here is the night sky in Spain. And here is a meteor streaking across it. Now, what did things look like at ground level when this fireball shot across the horizon? Watch for the pulse of light. It just lit up the whole area. And here's another view of the shooting star in São Pedro do Sul in neighboring Portugal. I never cease to be amazed by phenomena like this. I'll be back in 7 days, and in the meantime, I wish you all peace, joy, and happiness in the ensuing week. Thomas I. Likeness, Correspondent at Large, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Thanks, Thomas. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angela. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.